Here it is 7 o'clock. Let's get going. Welcome everyone. This is the Air Conservation Commission meeting. It is Thursday, August 25th, 2022. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, the OML, public bodies otherwise governed by the OML are temporarily relieved from the requirement that meetings be held in public places, open and physically accessible to the public, so long as measures are taken to ensure public access to the body's deliberations through adequate alternative means. This meeting will be live on Zoom. The public may participate remotely by joining Zoom. The ID number is 840-4058-0886 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Conservation Commission at CON@ayer.ma.us or by calling 978-772-8220, extension 143 prior to the meeting. Listeners in attendance this evening, we have George Bacon as member. We have Jess Gugino as member clerk. We have Mark Phillips as vice chair. Myself, John Schmallenberger as chair, and our conservation agent, Heather Hampson. Welcome to all of you and welcome to everyone who is viewing or listening. Do we have confirmation of agenda? Any changes? Okay, very good. Then motion to accept the agenda as written.
So moved.
Second.
Was moved by George Bacon, seconded by Mark Phillips. We will do a roll call vote. George, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jess, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mark, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, passes unanimously. Approval of meeting minutes for August 11th, 2022. Has everyone had an opportunity to read the minutes and any changes, comments?
Looks good. Thanks, Jess.
Yep, did look good. I've never, anything that I've ever done in the past, I've had it described as Herculean. But I will accept that, Jess. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes for August 11th, 2022 as written.
So moved.
Second.
It was moved by George Bacon, seconded by Mark Phillips. Do a roll call vote. George, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jess, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mark, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, passes unanimously. At this point in time, we will open for public input. If there is anyone out there just viewing or listening that has questions or comments, now's the time. Okay, hearing none, then we will move on. Let's see, our first item this evening is a public hearing, notice of intent, and we will open this NOI under the Wetlands Protection Act and also under the Air Wetlands Bylaw. So it's a notice of intent at Spectacle Pond Water Treatment Plant between Willow Road and Nemco Way. It is a DEP file number 100, to be determined in the future. Do we still don't have a DEP file number on that, Dan?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know, Charlie, do you know if we have one? Or Heather?
I haven't seen anything yet.
I'm not aware of being issued either.
Okay, well, we'll get that in the future. So who would like to tell us a little bit about this project?
Yeah, so Charlie, I'll start off a little of background on the project, then I'll let Charlie, he's from Ty and Bond, our consultant, kind of jump in and get into the nitty-gritty.
Okay.
Yeah, so thanks, Mr. Chairman. So the Spectacle Pond Water Treatment Plant Transmission Main Project, it actually came from April of 2021, we had a leak in our main transmission line that discharges from our Spectacle Pond water treatment plant. So it's a high criticality location. It's the only pipe that leaves the plant. So if we lose that pipe and we have to shut down that treatment plant, we're only left with our Grove Pond plant. The leak was identified to have be caused by corrosion, pinhole leaks in our 16-inch ductile iron pipe shortly downstream of the treatment plant. And so because of the high criticality, it's something we really should replace, rehab, et cetera, take care of. So I brought this forth to the Capital Planning Committee last year, and ultimately we decided to use ARPA funds to carry forward with this project. And we've consulted with Ty and Bond to do the design and permitting for the project. I think that's pretty much in a nutshell what's happening. And Charlie, I'll send it off to you so you can kind of get into more detail of the project.
Okay, can you hear me? I'm calling in on my
Mhm.
cell phone.
Yes, can hear you.
Yep, we can hear you.
So basically, like Dan mentioned, the existing water main was installed. The water treatment plant is a ductile iron pipe, and it's exhibited some corrosion issues and pinhole leaks. So the project proposes to install a new 18-inch diameter HDPE water main along the access road to the water treatment plant. And as part of the project, there's wetlands were delineated, and the work's going to occur within an existing easement. So the drawings show the perimeter controls to be implemented during the construction. So the proposed construction method is open cut, the new pipeline. There's currently, in addition to the existing 16-inch ductile iron water main, is also a 6-inch backwash water line from the water treatment plant that pumps the backwash water down the access road under the culvert and up to a sewer discharge location. So as part of the proposed project, they'll install the new HDPE pipeline. Have end caps on each end. They'll pressure test it and disinfect it. And then once it's already passed the bacteriological testing, they'll go back and make the connections at either end of the pipeline. There'll need to be a shutdown required. The treatment plant will need to be shut down. There'll be some coordination required to have an emergency water supply connection for Devon set up so they can shut down the pipeline and make the connections. There is a existing culvert crossing, so there will be some dewatering required. So there'll be a general dewatering permit required. And there's also, in addition to the perimeter controls, there'll be depending on the time of year, we're still waiting to hear back from the National Heritage and the Endangered Species Program and the NISA folks on particulars on turtle protection plan, but if there's a time of year restriction from April 15th to October 15th. So that in the event that the work occurs during that time, there'll be a turtle protection barrier installed with gates that's shown on the drawings. And then also there'll need to be a biologist engaged by the contractor to do some pre-survey of the area during construction to make sure there's no turtles that are in the vicinity of the work. So the contractor will be required to hire a biologist. The formal plan will need to be submitted to the Conservation Commission and also the National Heritage and Endangered Species Program for approval before any work occurs.
Anything else?
That's basically it.
Okay. Is this project exempt from,
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
I mean, I was looking at that too on page 5.1, talks about it being exempt, but
Yeah, I'm just curious as why, what that exactly means. If anybody can enlighten us to that.
Well, some work within paved roadways can be exempt. A maintenance notification letter type approach can be generally used in paved roadways, but in this case, with the proximity, there's also the Bennett Brook, so it is within a riverfront area too. That's one of the other resource areas. So, and also bordering land subject to flooding, I think basically require in the MESA, Massachusetts Endangered Species Act, all those basically trigger a notice of intent filing. So there would need to be an order of conditions.
Okay.
Prepared for the project.
Commissioners, you have questions for these gentlemen?
one would be about how long is the pipe area needing to be replaced?
The new pipeline's about 750 feet long.
Okay,
Do you have a sense of how long this project would take?
Well, we'll take some time to do the site preparation, get all the perimeter controls in place, and then they'll need to be inspected and approved. And then once that's all set up, anticipating that it should be about 3 weeks for the construction duration,
Mm-hmm.
with the shutdowns occurring on one day for the connections. So that'll be a long day, but
How about you, George? You have any questions?
Not at this time, no.
Mark?
I guess the only question, I did look at, some of the options or whatever. So one of them was to essentially reline the existing iron pipe, I believe, correct?
correct.
Because I know on the gas industry, they do a lot of pipelining and things like that. And typically on their pretty high pressure also. So I guess I wasn't quite understanding how it could not be lined. It said something about structural integrity of the pipe after the fact or something. And I just wondered, could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, the main problem with the lining alternatives is the presence of water. This is a pretty high groundwater area, and the pipeline's already exhibited some pinhole leaks. So for all of the lining technologies basically require a dry pipe to be able to install the lining systems. And there are bends in the pipe where it goes underneath the culvert. So the replacement alternative also has the added benefit too of maintaining the hydraulics of the system. If you line a pipe for a structural repair, you're getting reduced wall thickness or reduced pipe inside diameter. So your flow and pressure losses will go up also. So those are some of the challenges with the lining, not pretentious methods.
Okay. And and I'm sorry, you said the existing pipe was what size, and we're putting in a 16-inch. What was the original size?
16 to 18.
16, 18. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep, the existing pipeline is 16-inch ductile iron. So that's basically a nominal inside diameter. So the plastic pipe, the HDPE pipe, the 18-inch pipe size, actually the inside diameter is 16 inches. So that's why the HDPE pipe has a thicker wall thickness to handle the pressure versus the ductile iron pipe is a smaller wall thickness. So to maintain the existing hydraulic conditions, not cause any additional pressure losses. You need to upsize to the 18-inch HDPE pipe.
Okay. And Dan, that'll give us longevity that we're looking for from a long-term use perspective.
Correct.
I'm good, John.
Thank you, Mark. How about you, Heather? You have any questions?
No, I'm good. I was just looking at the plans showing the fire hydrant assembly, and I was just trying to figure out where that was going on the plans is all.
Yeah.
Part of the water treatment plant project, they did install a new hydrant at the building.
So that it's at the building? Okay, that was the
Yeah.
only question I had, because I just didn't see it listed on the plan, so I was just trying to figure out where that was going, because it was shown on the detail, so that's it.
So that's a new one that was recently installed, and then there's also another one proposed on the other end of the project next
Okay.
to an existing hydrant.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners or anyone viewing or listening?
So Heather, were you comfortable with the proposed erosion controls?
Yeah, because looking at the pictures of the existing road, it looks like, I mean, the road's higher than the wetlands anyway. So I guess, so how are we installing the pipe? Is he drilling a whole trench, or are you doing like directional drilling or anything like that? Like, how's that pipe getting installed?
Oh,
Open
it's gonna be
cut.
open.
Open, it'll be an open trench?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the erosion control that's proposed should be fine. If I have any concerns with it, obviously, if we get a rainstorm, I can always go out and look at the site to make sure everything's fine, but it should be okay. I don't want to see to put silk fence in there and have it disturbing the animals that might be I mean, the great, obviously, if you do this outside of their nesting area, so if we're doing it outside of that area, could we have silk fence installed as well besides just the wattles, just to be double safe with the trench going in? Or is that,
Current plan is to install the silt fence as part of the turtle protection barrier.
oh, okay,
But otherwise, so that depending on the time of year, the turtle protection barrier includes a silt fence. And then it's installed so that the turtles won't access the area, but otherwise the straw wattles would be sufficient. Because it's not a large area, there's not a lot of runoff
yeah,
from the drainage.
it doesn't look very big, so it should be, the wattle should be fine. With a quick turnaround of 3 weeks, it shouldn't take too long.
Dan, when are you proposing this work to happen?
We'd like to do it this fall/winter. I mean, it's really a remote site, so as long as the weather's all right, they could work into the winter.
Okay, all right, so is the turtle barrier and the fence and all, is that has to happen all the time, Heather, do you know, or is it?
No, he said
only-
it was only during from the October to April.
Or-
April to October, I'm sorry. So if this happens after October 15th, then they don't have to have it.
Right.
Given that I don't think silk fence is going to be necessary, because they're not going to be going straight to the edge of the road, right? They're going to be only going so wide. So they'll have that barrier there, then you'll have the erosion control, you'll have the wattles. It shouldn't, I don't anticipate there needing to be any additional silk fence there, or any, silk fence or erosion controls. The wattle should suffice. I mean, we'll see it when we go out. If any area requires anything additional, I can always request that, but I don't anticipate that being an issue. So the road's already there. If it was gonna erode already, it would have happened during construction of the treatment plant as well. So, because you can still see in the pictures that still have the erosion control matting, the coconut matting by the building itself.
Yeah, okay, and yeah, so that's what I was wondering, Dan, your intent would be late October, November timeframe more than likely?
Yeah, that's probably when we'd get started. We actually have the bid out now. And, while we're doing permitting concurrently, But, you know, it'll take time to get a contract together and get submittals in. So probably would happen around October sometime.
Yeah, okay.
And
Yeah,
they
it
have
seems like
to
that would
wait
cut some
for,
costs down anyway, so it might be planned that way would work out best anyways.
and they have to wait for hearing back from Natural Heritage anyways, so. It should be, good.
The National Heritage comment period ends on August 31st, and then, but yeah, they'll also, contractors will have to order the materials too, so that could take some time depending on availability.
And we need our DEP number.
We need that.
so I guess sidewalk,
Yes, when can we do a sidewalk?
I cannot this weekend, but I can after that.
So the following Saturday, is that good for?
Yeah.
For people? Can you,
Just to point out, that is Labor Day weekend in case anybody's going away.
anybody going away? I'm not.
Now that I got a
I'd like-
sidewalk,
What's that, Mark?
not now that I have a sidewalk.
Sorry about that. What time do you want to do it? 9 o'clock?
9 is fine.
9 o'clock work for everybody? Can somebody give me that date, please? Is that
September 3rd.
Oh, yeah, so I believe it's the 3rd.
3rd already, huh? It's September 3rd. 9 o'clock.
And where would we meet? Best location?
Water plant,
Where?
at the water plant. Dan, will we be able to get in there? Or will the gate be locked?
Yeah, the gate would be locked. I can get it open for you. I'll make sure it's open. I'll try to attend as well.
Thanks.
All right, then Saturday, September 3rd, 9 a.m. at the water plant. Great. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And we will see you on the 3rd.
We have
Thank
to do a motion to continue.
Yep, motion to continue the notice of intent for the Spectacle Pond Water Treatment Plant between Willow Road and Nemco Way. We do not have a DEP file number yet until
Oh,
What?
September 8th.
September 8th.
So moved.
Second,
Motion was moved by George Bacon, was seconded by Mark Phillips. Do a roll call vote. George, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jess, how do you vote?
I,
Mark, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, passes unanimously. All righty. See you on the 3rd and then on the 8th. Have a
All
good
right.
evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item this evening is a discussion of Ayer Solar 2 construction update, Rohit Garg, DEP file number 100-0444. And Rohit, thank you for joining us this evening.
Good afternoon or good evening. I have with me Cal Goldsmith as well and Kyle Bouchard from GPR on the call as well.
Very good. All right, thank you. Welcome, Cal and Kyle. Nice to see you guys.
Good evening. Thanks.
Yeah, the reason that you're with us this evening is that when we lost our conservation agent, it's been about a year ago, I guess.
November.
In November. Yep, Joanne Christoph. And you guys were proceeding with your construction. We didn't have anyone really to go out on a regular basis or on a basis at all to see what was going on. We are fortunate to have Heather Hampson as our agent now to join our team. And she has gone out several times and has some concerns. about what was approved in the notice of intent and what is actually being built. What we are going to require going forth is notification of changes sooner than later. We don't want to know about these things after it's all done and pretty much too late to do anything about it. So what's one thing that we would like as the project proceeds, we would like timely information. If you guys run up against something that it's impossible to do or very, very difficult to do. And every project has these things where there are changes, and more than likely they will be fine. We want to know about them. We just want to know about them. So we'd like to know in advance or as it happens, the changes in the field. We would like to know a list as much as possible of what has changed from the notice of intent. And would also like for Heather to be able to meet with you, Rohit, on a face-to-face Zoom, just to have a sit down and for her to get a better understanding of the project, the time frame of the project, and just the changes that have happened, and if you foresee any changes happening in the future. So that's why you're here this evening, is for clarity and for information. Heather, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's pretty much it. The only other item is, and as I believe I informed the commission of, is the a letter from Natural Heritage. I know, and I appreciate you forwarding me that email, Rohit, that Kyle had sent. But if I could just get something on there, like from them, from their office in writing, saying that they're notified of the changes and they have no further issues with them. That's just my concern on that point. Other than that, everything else that I've addressed for concerns, John has addressed, so I appreciate that.
And Heather, you have probably not complete, but a list of concerns that you have.
Yeah, I've gone through the plan set sheet by sheet and wrote down items that haven't been built yet, that I just want, would sit down with Rohit or Kyle or everybody, either Zoom or in person, to go over to get some sort of timeline on when these items are going to be done, or if any of these are going to change. So yeah, I've gone through and done that. And the only other concern, and I don't know if I'm speaking ahead, so forgive me, is just one item. And when we get to that plan set of the turnaround that has changed location, on the old plan, the approved plan, that turnout was outside the 100-foot buffer and is now moved inside. So I just want the commission to weigh in on that at some point as well.
Okay. All right. Sounds very good. Other commissioners, you have comments? Questions, concerns?
I believe one of the main issues we had too was just the lack of action on things that we had identified and how quickly they were being fixed, or should I say not being fixed at all. So Heather, if that's what you have outlined in that letter or whatever to Rohit, that's great. If not, I guess I'd like to make sure that we are capturing that both in the minutes and getting some answers as to how we're going to get these taken care of.
Yeah, it's one of the most outstanding concerns I think that I have on site is just obviously the replication areas, when those are going to be planted. Erosion control continues to be a concern about getting that replaced. We've done a great job getting it done. Coming down the roadway, the entranceway, almost to the culvert, not 100% replaced. And then it's everything beyond that I think I've asked that about two weeks ago, and that hasn't been done yet. So we did a good job first half. Now we got to get the second half going. But again, the last 2 weeks that I've gone out, I haven't run into anybody working out on site, so I don't know when they've been there. But I've gone out on a Tuesday and a Wednesday and hadn't seen anybody. So, but the site is stable, which is the positive side. We did get that going, which was good. And the erosion control matting is put down on the slopes that are there, which is fantastic now. So those erosion controls aren't in danger of breaching because we have that matting there, but they still don't look the nicest.
Cal, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I'm not sure. I've seen some of these some of the erosion control out there, and it seems pretty good. And the erosion control monitor doesn't have a problem with it.
Oh,
Wholesale
she
replacing-
has listed it on every single one of her
I
reports.
finished?
Yeah.
Could I finish, please?
Sorry.
If there is erosion control that clearly needs replacing, or he'll do it, but to wholesale replace all erosion control in that whole site doesn't seem reasonable. It doesn't seem necessary. The erosion control in many places is not under any strain at all. And it's functioning perfectly well. And like you said, the site is stable. If the erosion control monitor has asked Rohit to replace erosion control, that's fine, but just doing it wholesale across the whole site, I don't think is reasonable and necessary, and it's expensive.
And I'm not asking for the whole site. I'm just asking in certain locations. I do have several pictures of it from that I took on Tuesday. If the commission would like to see these erosion control issues that I have, I can definitely share that.
So, yes, please.
Okay, you have to bear with me because it's not, I emailed them to myself, so it's a matter of doing that. You're gonna see that part of the screen, but at least gives you an idea of what these erosion controls look like. So these are what you have that you're looking, you're looking at. So, oh, where is it? I'm sorry. Forgive me. I'm still new to this. But you have this section here, where you can barely see the silk fence anymore because it's fallen down. You have another.
So let's stop
Simple
there.
matter
So
of
Cal, does that look like it's functioning well, Cal?
Well, that's a simple matter of repairing the silt fence where it's there. You don't have to replace all the silt fence to do that.
And again, Heather was not asking for that. And I think again, that this stuff has been like this for quite some time before Heather was even around. So that's kind of been our concern, is that we've been ignored in trying to get these things responded to. And
Well,
I think one of the
I
things
guess
I
part
have
of
heard in the past was that hay bales have gone up quite a bit in price. I'm sorry, but that's just something that needs to be dealt with. And you
part
need to
of
figure
the
out how to
problem, I
fix
guess,
that.
Mark, is I'm looking at that. There's vegetation upslope of it. There's no sign of any erosion against that silt fence or those hay bales. There's not sign of any erosion that's happened. Typically, when you have to replace erosion control, you replace it because it's been overwhelmed or deteriorated, or it has a lot of erosion against it. And I'm just not seeing it.
Shouldn't be falling down though.
Well, that could be repaired.
Yeah,
Kind of hard to
exactly.
see from
That's all
that
we're asking.
angle.
It is hard to see from that angle. You're correct.
Yeah, I said, I
Heather
apologize
can
that these
compare.
pictures aren't 100% the greatest. Again, I'm still learning how to share screens and do this. I did it fairly quickly. But like this area here, and I believe this one on the top here is part of the replication area. So it is fairly flat, but you do see that those hay bales have deteriorated. And I know I spoke to Dave on site about this. They weigh a ton. When the longer they sit there, it's going to be harder to remove them per the order of conditions. All the old hay bales need to be removed. So it's easier to take them out now and replace them with new ones that may be lighter when you have to take them out when the project is done, than to try to hand scoop these out, because per the order of conditions, it has to be done by hand, than to take out deteriorated piles of hay that have been sitting there for 3-4 years. I'm looking at it on that standpoint. It would be easier to take this out now, replace it, especially as you're going to go through and start replanting these items, then be able to take out a full bale of hay, then bits and pieces of it by hand.
Sure, I would agree that those are deteriorated, need to be replaced. And as long as it's done on a point by point basis and not a wholesale replacement, I think.
Which
that's
is what
reasonable.
I've expressed on site, because I understand it is hard to do the whole site. And so that's why I pinpointed more of specific areas that needed to be done. And this was the last one that I stated about 2 weeks ago, was to start looking at beyond the culvert, the stream crossing, and going to the large basin, and they haven't been done yet. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to find anybody out on site the last 2 times I've gone out.
And
And
are
I
you
know
in our?
when Rihanna has been
erosion
out, she hasn't
control?
seen anybody as well, and we've gone out at different
you-
times.
Just a general question. Are you in the erosion control monitor coordinating
Yes,
your feedback to Rohit? Because he should be, my understanding is erosion control monitor that he's paying for is the one that he should be taking direction from on all
But-
this.
and it's been in her report every time too, these same pictures.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so we've had a problem in the last 2 weeks to find people. Unfortunately, there's a sporadic crew of members who were supposed to be at the site no longer showed up to the site for the last 2 weeks. So we are facing a little bit of a shortage of labor. That was it's no excuse, but there's been just a challenge that I was told that last week, all of these hay bales that have been identified, some of these pictures were not shared with me, but the projects, Rihanna, who is the Epsilon consultant, that's been out there every day or every week since the project has been ongoing for a whole year now. We've been working with them, identifying it. This has taken a little longer for the project to be constructed. And yes, we agreed that we would update and, make sure these areas would be, rectified. Unfortunately, I already told the contractor last week that, hey, he needs to get out there. He was supposed to be this week. Unfortunately, again, labor shortage, was unable to secure it. But I did have a conversation with him last week. He will be at site Sunday and Monday or Tuesday. I will try to, if nobody's there, I will go there myself and replace. Okay, so that component of it is there. But I do want to make sure, Mr. Commissioner, I want to make sure that you understand is that although that Joanne has been gone, we've been communicating with the commission, for, routinely, while Heather was gone, if there's any violation or any, first Rihanna, the Epsilon consultant who we've been paying, she's been sending weekly reports. I know if there was any issues that we notified that we accidentally spilled a little bit of dirt, maybe a bucket full, we notified directly the commission. We contacted Jess responded right away. So please understand, we have been diligently trying to address any issues that we thought even maybe minor or anything. Other projects may have just said, oh, just don't worry. We went and notified it because we knew the orders and conditions. Okay, we understand that. Second thing is the Conservation Commission as well joined the public, the planning board for a site walk in June for the walk of understanding all these changes. Again, I was unable to attend that meeting, so I asked, because planning board asked to be pushed up, and so GPR stepped in, to be able to walk through at the site all of these changes that were occurring at the time at the time. So we are trying to communicate with the commission. Please don't think we're just not communicating. We are trying to communicate with the commission. And unfortunately, this project did take a lot longer than we expected. Unfortunately, COVID is affecting everybody in a different way, from operational, supply chain, every which way. So labor shortage has been constantly a problem for us. So we're definitely, facing with that, but we're almost there. And I just wanted to make sure we understands that it's not like we're not communicating with them. I mean, Heather met with Heather faced on the site July 27th. Met with her within a week. Numerous things that she requested got completed in 1 week. Even the site control, the erosion control identified completely changes of things. Then really, anything she sent, agent has sent us, we try to address right away. We got an email for the list of changes August 4th from the agent saying, hey, can you give us a list of changes? And, things, August 4th, a lot of construction was still complete. So we couldn't give you a full detailed list of things, but we offered a high level number of details. And that conversation, communication occurred between August, 4th and an 8th. So we're still trying to communicate with the commission and its agent as best as we can. So please understand.
Okay, all right. Yep, thank you for that. Kyle, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think it's plain that the site being stable and that the limits being exactly as they were approved by the commission speaks a lot. And I think we can talk about what the changes are as they've been sketched out.
Okay, so we can get a list of those. I understand that there, a list of the changes is forthcoming and,
Well, the list is graphic at the moment with the sheets that were sent to the commission.
Yep, yeah, we got those and I forwarded them along. Unfortunately, like I said, I couldn't make print copies for John and Jess because I had issues with the color copier today, but I got it all figured out, so I'll have them for you. And they include the elimination of some tree boxes, the changings to the road grade. So those items are on there. There's a couple other ones that I think you've missed on there, Kyle, that I found that you didn't remove, and I think that's fine. Because I know there's no longer going to be that water, the water main, so that's still listed in some of the plans. But I did find that, but I know it's not going in, so
Well,
that's fine.
Understand that there was not every sheet in the plan set of some 20 some sheets was modified. It was really just the sheets that depicted the overall changes, including the water line.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
profile.
You missed some of the water line details on the plans that you sent with changes. That's what I'm saying. Which I understand that the water main's not going in, so it's not a big deal. I'm just letting you know that there are,
So again,
it's
it
still
wasn't
listed in some portions of the plan.
to,
details of the
mark
water
up
main.
the entire plan set. It was simply to express to the commission in a graphic form on the plans that had been approved what the nature of the changes were. It's not a comprehensive plan set markup.
okay,
Because the elimination of water main details and so on goes along with there not being the water main installed. Couldn't we walk through those drawings? If it's pleasing to the commission.
can we?
Well,
But do you have the points identified versus what is in the meeting packet that are possibly missed that you're referencing, do you know?
Oh, that I'm referencing. So yeah, no, it's like I said, it's not a big deal. I don't want Kyle to think that I'm like calling him out on something. No, it's just on plan sheet C 4.3. If you go further past the culvert, it still states on there that the 2-inch water main. And I know on the above detail, it's all just X'd out. That was the only comment, is you X'd it out on all the portions and not the other ones. It's not a huge deal.
I
I understand
apologize.
it's not going in. So
I
I
haven't-
apologize if you think I was,
I haven't-
that was
oh,
the only
no,
comment I
I'm sorry.
had.
I haven't seen the list.
Okay.
Could I ask why the tree box filter, the number of those has gone down?
And that's a very good question because what happened I don't know if I can share my screen, but I'd be happy to if that's okay, but maybe we just discuss it. The slope of the driveway was steepened, and so there's less pavement overall. There's less impervious area in the proposed modifications than was approved by the commission. So that's resulting in less need for tree box filters, because the tree box filter's purpose is ostensibly for the cleaning of the impervious runoff from the driveway. So that's the primary reason for the reduction of the tree box filters.
Reduced by how many? 2?
In half, so by 3.
By
So
3.
from 6 to 3?
That's right.
And those 3 have been installed.
And likewise, the amount of impervious area has been cut about in half.
Okay.
Is this just while we have Dan on here. Is that something you would have liked to review ahead of time, Dan?
I had a conversation with Dan early on and the fire department when it was actually, I think it was right near the time that we were going to be walking out on the site with the planning board and the conservation commission. And I saw what things needed to be changed to suit the site conditions. I had a conversation, it was a loose conversation, just a, hey, what about this, you know, from the paving standpoint, from the slope standpoint, is this something that is that feasible? Is that workable? I described it the best I could. The responses I got seemed as if that was reasonable to vote. That's what I recall.
Yeah, this is Dan. Yeah, so I did meet with Kyle several months back, kind of talked a little bit about the driveway, a little bit about the paving. And, you know, I think we kind of talked about if you did have any kind of changes, it'd be kind of more of a, you know, show me exactly what you're doing. And then, you know, I think as we discussed, like we said, it seemed reasonable. So we were talking more about stormwater calculations. Jess, I think was your question, if we'd want to see those.
Yeah, just done that. Yeah.
I think it would be good, you know, maybe just a, you know, a summary, 1-page summary or something that Kyle could put together to show that why those are no longer needed would be a good thing to have, and to review compared to the original.
Sure. And that's no problem. I can do that. And just in general, so everyone understands that the tree boxes themselves don't result in any net detention value for the water or net really retention value. At least it wasn't calculated that way. So that retention and detention value is in other parts of the project or further on down the road in the underground detention system. But I can provide a summary. It's a loose summary. We don't have all of these measures as built yet, surveyed, to know the particulars and the exactness of it, but it's all the right pieces are still in place in the stormwater infrastructure.
And Kyle, the reduction in impervious surface, is that all basically laid out on C 4.2? And is it merely the, I guess, straightening of the entranceway?
Well, it's partially, Mark, the straightening, but it's also the steepness of the slope allows for the flattening out of the slope. But ostensibly, when this was being designed, there was a concern that an 8% slope would tend to degrade too fast. So instead, the slope was steepened, since it is paved, to about a 12% slope, and then that allows the flattening out part of the drive to occur quicker or sooner. And that's when it flattens out, that's where the pavement will stop.
So by increasing the slope, you're saying you're technically creating less impervious surface?
Well, that's what ends up happening because we're reaching that flat point sooner.
Okay, but are you still not essentially just taking more ground away? If you straighten out the steepness, if it's still not the same amount of impervious surface, regardless if you go up and down versus side to side?
No, what I mean to say is we are proposing to shorten the amount of impervious paving because we reach a flat part of the driveway sooner. We make a longer part of a flat driveway and a shorter part of and steeper part of the driveway that slope had been coming farther out at a slope at which it was decided we needed to pave the 8%. Instead, we made a 12% or so slope that comes down quicker, flattens out sooner. And so we have a longer stretch of just gravel driveway instead of a less steep, longer stretch of medium slope driveway.
Okay, thank you. I didn't catch on to the gravel aspect of it. That's what I didn't understand. Thanks.
And Kyle, there's been a turnaround towards that steep slope. And it's been removed from the end where the array is. Is
Yeah,
that,
so the turnaround was at the end of at the start of the array, and that was outside the buffer. The turnaround has then been moved to the end of that big basin that's around the curve. So previously it was outside the buffer and now is inside. So I assuming hearing them talk, the area is not going to be paved. So it just ends up being more roadway or gravel roadway inside the jurisdictional area than what was previously approved. So that's just a matter of what the commission wants to do with that part of it. I mean, I have other questions as far as some of the changes go. I just to the plan sets, if we could get those, if I could just ask those before we let Kyle and Rohit and Cal go, that I just want to just sticking to me. But yeah, that's the sticking point that I think the commission needs to look at. Is that turnout? I don't know if that makes any change as far as they see as a plan, if they want what they want to do with that. But I did notice that today that turnout had moved, and I was like, what? Okay, so it's now. So I don't know if that was previously going to be planted grass and now is going to be dirt, and how that changes. So maybe we need more detail on that part of it from GPR to get that, to figure that, to make a decision on that part. But that
hasn't been built. It's
hasn't
just-
been built yet. No,
Just proposed. Okay.
What sheet is that on, Heather?
that is on sheet 4.
0.4. Can I
4.4.
just add into that just to clarify a little bit? So that turnaround was occurring inside the fenced area. And in a, again, very preliminary discussion with the fire department, they really didn't want to get into the fenced area if they didn't have to. There really wasn't any place else to put a turnaround for them. And it happens to be part of the constraints that we did run into are ledge outcrops in that particular location where that turnaround is occurring. It just all seemed to line up that would make sense there. It is in the very outer part of the 100-foot buffer. It's certainly outside the 50-foot buffer. So just
Well, I understand it. It does make sense that you would do it that way. It's just that today was the first day I heard about it.
Right, agreed. So if I'm looking at the drawing, is it safe to say, Kyle, that turnaround now would be essentially closer to where the abutters are?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's turned upside down to keep the plan consistent.
Yeah.
Profile.
Okay.
Anyone else have any comments?
Heather, the other thing I just wanted to check on, I thought you expressed that it was a bit of a challenge that we were supposed to have somebody that, like, a contact number for you to have, and I'm not sure if it's Rohit, but it's been a challenge if it was Rohit to talk to, or if it was supposed to be somebody else. But I know, Rohit, you mentioned about, getting back to Heather on a fairly regular basis, although I've heard a varying story that maybe, the response is not quite as quick. And so I just want to make sure we know who the point of contact is supposed to be.
So from my perspective, what is responsiveness and what is quick? August 4th, email, August 8th, respond, 4 days later, August.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's not acceptable.
4 days is not responsive enough. 3 days is not responsive enough.
Not if we have
Right.
something that's of major concern. Yeah.
Well, I think some of the issue was more earlier in July, wasn't it, Heather, where?
Yeah, that was the earlier concern was in July, trying to get out on site. The issue from the 4th to the 8th was more or less the response that I had received, which the commission was forwarded, and we discussed at the last meeting.
But I think there was some problem with, I think Rohit, you were out of the country for a few weeks and.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was
And Heather was
unfortunately
trying-
not.
Yeah,
Right.
it happens, but Heather was trying to reach somebody. I think she contacted GPR, I think. And you guys didn't know anything more to add and referred Heather back to Rohit. So it was another 3 weeks. I think that was more of a frustration of not having a contact person.
Yeah, no problem. I think it's just growing pains because like you said, Heather was new coming in and, you know, we had established that I was the point person and she had contacted GPR, and Joanne worked with GPR first, and then we established that I would be the new point contact person for that. And so it's no problem. I apologize. I will make sure we respond quicker.
I
and
mean,
so forth.
basically, if you're going to be out of the country, we should have another contact person available for
Not a problem.
faster response. Thank you.
Thanks, Rohit. I appreciate that.
And Mark, obviously, if there is an emergency situation out there, they can always contact us and we'll respond to that.
Okay. Anyone else have any?
I don't think we had that impression from Heather when she had contacted you, and it's like, no, that's not us. So that, that's a little concerning, but
Yeah.
thanks, Cal.
Just things we need to straighten out.
What's the planned timetable on thinking about the replication area?
So I've talked with Oxbow, who is the replication, individual, and due to the fact that it's like a complete drought right now, they recommended that basically end of September, early October is when we should be considering, think about the replication queue areas. That's number one. Two, we were trying to focus on getting everything else done, cleaned up. Per the comments from Heather last time I was there, the site is not looking, we want the site to start looking completed. And so we didn't want to dig out the wetland replication area and started another component and then wait until the end of September and October to be completed. So we're just waiting for all the other components to be done at the site related to that. And then we would start the wetland replication again. From my understanding, Oxbow recommended tail end of September and early October, just because it's been pretty dry out there. And no plantings would have, other than the seedings, no actual woodland plantings would have survived.
Jess, do you happen to remember, I know in other instances, and maybe I'm just getting projects confused, but typically wetland replications were required essentially prior to most of other construction going on, but was that not the case here? I'm not sure what the order of conditions indicated.
Yeah, I think our new bylaw and I think our regulations are starting to talk about replications being worked on much earlier in the project so that we don't get to the end and have a replication never done that was initially part of the plan. I don't think that provision is in this particular order.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And Rohit, if I could just make one comment, if you receive any, email or written comment from Oxbow in regards to those replication areas, if there's any way you could just keep me updated on that, that would be great, because that's one of my major concerns that I have on there, which I expressed to you on the 4th of when those replication areas would be planted. So just an update on that would be great, and I would appreciate that.
What other information you would like compared to what I just provided? I'm sorry. I didn't...
To hear about it before now would have been nice.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I was able to finally connect with Oxbow on Monday, but that's fine. I knew I was talking today, so I waited. Not a problem.
Anyone else have comments, questions?
So at some point, when things smooth out, will we be getting some revised plans that have a lot of these details of the changes spelled out?
We,
So, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
well,
I'll go ahead.
provide that to you, Jess, on the drawings. Have you not seen the sketches that have been provided?
What sketches?
What was sent to Heather that's got notes
And
on?
they're part of the packet, and Jess, I apologize, I couldn't get the color to print today, so it was in the packet online. And I did forward them when they came in through email, but I got it on Tuesday afternoon. But I apologize, I couldn't get them printed to put in your packet. I do have one question though, on the first plan set, with the movement of the road. You have it going in your retaining wall. Then the retaining wall 1, so obviously that's gonna have to change. So we might want to make sure you make that comment on the next plan or sheet that we submit that we can discuss, because that is now gonna obviously have to go because it's your road's in it now.
Retaining wall 1, the large wall.
Yeah, that retaining wall 1.
Yeah, it's noted, but okay. Yeah, send me your comments, Heather. I'll
Yeah, that'd be great. So again, it'd be best if we could all sit down together and go through these, because I have a lot of just questions as far as timeline of construction and details that are missing on the plan. So I just want to see when those are going to be done.
Ken, you have your hand up?
I was gonna wait for the commission to finish, then I'll,
Jump on in.
excuse me?
Thanks, Ken. Just
Jump
one
on
last,
in
one last thing, Heather, then too.
Okay.
Yes.
I thought I saw in one of the emails, you said you were gonna send us the order of conditions on this. If I
Oh,
don't have my
gosh,
original
I
copy.
apologize. You're right. Yeah, I'll get that to you Monday.
Okay, yeah, I'd just like to go back through it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I apologize.
Anything else from commissioners? George? Good.
No.
All right, Ken.
Yeah, thanks, everybody, for chatting about the project this late in the process and considering the amount of changes that have been made on the job on the fly. So I'd like to just address it to Rohit, I guess, and the engineers, that in the event that the list is complete, which I think hasn't been necessarily a list, but it's been a indication on a plan, a PDF I saw a copy of because it was posted on the agenda. And that is complete, in the event that that is complete, I would assume that everything that's not on that list would be completed on the job. So my main concern, and I'm glad Heather showed the photographs, because my main concern is that the lumen seed that needs to be placed entirely on the entire site after construction is done needs to have established a new, grasses and things that are there to establish and help prevent erosion in the future. None of that is in place. They reused the junk that was left over on the site that's loaded with roots and things like that and pushed it around and say it's a better product, according to Mr. Goldsmith. That's a disputed situation. Certainly grasses cannot take hold inside of roots underneath them from abandoned, broken down trees and whatnot. So my main concern, I'm happy with the progress. I think as an abutter, that's a good thing. But I am concerned that they do not get to the point where they say they are going to eliminate the lumen seed that's needed to dress the site up and finish it, including the note that's underneath the solar panels, which also calls for lumen seed to be reused from the site. I'm not sure if they have any left in stockpile. And then the grass is planted there, similar to Solar One, which is a completed solar field and does have seems to have the right grasses as we all see it, and it's mowed and maintained. So the main concern I have, and I appreciate everything that's being done, is that those small details that are in the notes that can concern the final coverage of the site, including underneath the culvert, which Kyle Burchard responded to quite eloquently when the consultants talked about it in his letter, and how it would be planted with core products stuck in the banks. The bank would be replicated underneath the culvert in the stream bed, including that, and including the replication area, of course, which has obviously been spoken about. But my main concern is, and you can see it in the pictures, that weeds are already taking over.
Mhm.
And the topsoil that needs to be replaced and with loam, not just reused stuff, gets done and it gets the proper seed and proper soil and seed mix so that that'll grow in. And I believe that's undoubtedly part of the stormwater calculations and erosion control situation. Those things just don't go abandoned and left as, you know, raw gravelly topsoil, no topsoil. So that's what I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. Anything else from commissioners or anyone viewing?
Yeah, actually, I just caught one of the changes that I believe here on, back on C4.2, top right-hand corner. Says turtle nesting area adjusted to be at the bottom of slope above the wetlands rather than at the top of the slope against the wall. Just in thinking that, it sounds like that might not be such a great thing. And Jess and George, I guess from your experience, does that sound okay to you?
I'll defer to George.
I guess I'm assuming turtle nesting area, typically that's in a drier area. That's why the turtles leave the water to be
Yeah.
someplace where it's not going to be flooded. But I guess I'm not sure quite how far down that is based on the arrow just kind of being somewhat, you know, general and generic, I suppose.
It would still be several feet above the wetlands, several feet above the wetland replication area.
Looks as much as 6 or 8 feet in some places.
According to the grading on the plan, and again, it's not final grade, it shows on here, which would be where Mark's concern is. It just shows it starts at 2 feet.
It goes up to 6 or 8.
It goes up to 9, yes, but it starts at 2, which could be where his concern is coming from.
That it might be drier, but the turtles, it might not be something the turtles would actually use. Or,
In that area where it's 2 feet, it could be extended up the slope easily enough.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the suitability of it in general. And again,
It's probably
I don't know
pretty
enough
consistent.
about it to be sure, but it just kind of caught my eye.
And I believe that was part of the Natural Heritage approval, which is part of the reason why I requested that a letter from them in writing saying that they're fine with those changes.
Okay,
That
great,
would be,
that
that
is
would
good
come
too.
from them saying that they're fine with it because they're the ones that approved the turtle nesting area to begin with.
Excellent, thank you. That's what I
Yep.
was looking for. Okay.
Yeah, so if we could get that, that would I think eat appease the commission's concerns with that.
Yeah, so from the NHESP's perspective, Kyle and myself will reach out to see what they can provide us for that confirmation for the commission's purposes. Second thing is I'll coordinate with you, Heather, tomorrow about
Yeah.
availability next week.
Unfortunately, I'm out of the office tomorrow.
Okay, so.
I mean, you can send me an email. I know I'm not supposed to for the commission on my days off, but I still check it. So if you email me tomorrow, I'll probably still get back to you. It might be later in the day.
That's fine. I was just going to coordinate with you availability next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, to sit down with the changes to go.
I have a full schedule, so you just let me know when and I'll make it work.
Okay, perfect.
and I think I mean, just to underscore, I think like what you want from Natural Heritage, we want something in writing that,
I want something in writing from them on their letterhead stating that they have reviewed and in the changes to the plan or fully understand the changes that have happened on site and they have no concerns with them. Because I, in my opinion, I think removing a retaining wall and moving the turtle nesting area is constitutes as a change, which is what's listed in their approval. So I just want something from them saying that they're fine.
Mhm.
I appreciate Kyle sending the email on, showing that he did discuss it with them, but I'd like something from them in their letterhead that I can put in the file for the applicant, for the DEP file that we have.
Ken, you have your hand up again.
I apologize, just one final thing.
You don't need to apologize.
There's a screening plan and it's C81 that I anticipate also will be completed. I haven't had anyone talk about that yet. So again, I'm
Yeah,
just,
we didn't get a complete plan set either, because I was anticipating getting a new one for the culvert as well, which was not given with this plan set either. So I
No.
anticipate that would be coming as well, because I know that culvert did change slightly. So we would get a new plan for that as well. And thank you, Ken, for mentioning that the plantings and the grass, that's on every single one of my plan sheets that I've noted, that the grass and swale and all those things need to be planted, so.
okay, I guess there might be a misunderstanding, Heather. In the original approval, it's plan C81. Has nothing to do with the changes, the screening plan. So it's a separate drawing on its own.
Yeah.
In addition to that, there's a separate screening plan that I think the applicant is aware of from a settlement. That screening plan called for product to be put in first. None of it's been put in. So there's actually two screening plans that the applicant needs to address. So I appreciate that. Thank you. That'll be all I have.
The screening for abutters, Ken?
There's a screening plan that's included in your set. See, that was approved by the planning board and the Conservation Commission. And then a separate screening plan that Mr. Goldsmith provided a plan for. And its attachment is an exhibit to a settlement between the town and the applicant and the abutters. And that screening plan is not part of the original set. It's a separate plan, separate exhibit that calls for more screening down in the area of the culvert and whatnot. So the commission should be aware of that. I provided a copy to the planning board separately, and the town has a copy of the settlement and so forth. So there's two screening plans, in other words, in play.
There's one attached to our order and then one attached to the settlement with the abutters.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Anything else? So Heather, you will get together, have a little face-to-face with Rohit and possibly Kyle and Cal, whoever. And have a discussion.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Okay. And I guess we'll leave it at that for the time being. Thank you, Rohit, for joining us, and Kyle and Cal, nice to see you again. If you have any questions at this point.
Hey, Cal, did you want to ask about the notice?
Oh, yeah, the notice of violation. I think we've been responsive and given everything that we've been asked for. So I think it'd be appropriate to withdraw that. I don't see any reason to have that still on the docket. So I'd like to make that request.
Any commissioners opposed to removing the violation?
Just ask Heather, are you comfortable with things proceeding now?
Yes. Thank you.
I have no problem.
Yep.
We
can get that
appreciate it.
taken.
Thank you.
Yep, no worries.
George?
All right, well, thank you very much.
Oh,
Yeah.
hold on, John. George, you okay with that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
it's fine.
Okay,
You
All
too, Mark?
I'm okay then too, John.
Okay,
Thank you.
all righty. If there's nothing else, we will to stop our discussion, and you guys can get on with your evening.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks all.
we really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, good night.
Night.
All right, then our next discussion this evening is a final report, the peer review of Stratton Hill Conservation Analysis. BSC Group, Matt Byrne, and Matt, you are with us.
I am with you.
So, there you are. How are you?
Howdy. Good.
Good,
How's
glad to
everyone?
see you. Yeah, we're all good. We're good.
Great.
So, would you like to
Give us an overview.
have a little
Yeah,
overview? Yes.
Perfect. That's what I was hoping, because I on Tuesday, as you probably all know, I delivered a fairly lengthy document to you, and I presume that there hasn't quite been enough time to digest it all. So what I was hoping for tonight was just kind of like a high-level overview of what I was thinking and you know, what we made of the whole thing, and then I would expect, you know, after you've had some time to digest, we could have a more in-depth discussion. The report attempts to address a wide range of questions that were and concerns that were expressed in the RFP. So it's pretty broad-based, the material we presented to you. In general, you know, the OSRD regulations and guidelines, I think, just on a personal level, I think are really a model for the approach that we ought to be taking in landscape scale planning. I think it asks for all the right things, and, you know, sort of creates a framework in which we could really do good quality landscape scale planning for large projects like this. The breadth of data that's required in the conservation analysis is impressive. And, you know, I think it should be an exemplar of how we do this for big undeveloped tracts. So kudos to the town for, you know, for coming up with this and making this the law that you're working under. And I do have my sort of general criticism of this follows my criticism, or the thinking that I'm working on with regard to how we approach buffer zone impacts and reviewing projects with that are proposed in buffer zones and in other sort of situations where we're trying to make value determinations at the landscape scale, because it's challenging. You know, really, I think that the processes like this face the problem of sort of how do you deal with all this wonderful data that you've requested. You know, coming up with an interpretation of what is highest conservation value is incredibly challenging. And so I think that that's, you know, something to bear in mind, that I think all these sorts of mechanisms need real considerable thought and so forth to take them forward. So as far as the Stratton Hill Conservation Assessment goes, I think by and large, the data that you're working with are great. There are some deficiencies. I've pointed those out in sections 2, and I've discussed them a bit in section 6 of the report. So I'll draw your attention to those places. I've sort of teased out where I thought those deficiencies in the data that were presented are. And a couple of examples include the way that wildlife generally is addressed, lack of any discussion about invasive species, the way in which soils data were presented. I think there are some deficiencies in the presentation of data for the analysis. And in sort of the bottom line, the conservation priority ranking, I don't really see how it flows from the analysis. You know, in very broad terms, I don't disagree with the result. You know, the northern part of the site is comparatively important. It's adjacent to large blocks of open space. There's walking trails, there's wetlands, there's you know, interesting features, there's mature forest. There's a lot of interesting stuff up there in the northern part. And, you know, the importance of Long Pond just doesn't seem to be addressed. I'm really not clear on the conservation priority ranking in the defining of the medium priority That's not really a thing that I see in the process. So I'm not really clear what that is intended to mean. You know, the value of the power line right of way really isn't addressed and brought to bear. And then, you know, we don't really have a sense of the percentage of land that ends up in each category, you know, where the highest priority should be. I think, you know, you need to demonstrate a 50% portion of the site that would ultimately go into conservation. And I don't really have a sense of the breakdown of how it would be how that site would be broken up in that way.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, we've presented to you a whole bunch of research and opinion on the rights of way and habitat values presented in rights of way. We've given a bunch of thoughts and guidance on stormwater management, which we have to kind of address in the abstract at this point, because we understand that, you know, that's all to be determined. And then as an addendum, what we could learn about blasting. There's not a heck of a lot out there for us to dig into. We didn't find a lot on either the impacts of blasting or really how it's controlled and so forth. But we came up with what we could and have presented that to you. And then finally, I've tried to present some guidance relative to the nexus of the conservation analysis and conservation restriction baseline document reports, which there's an awful lot of overlap. And I think, you know, that's great, and there's a lot to work with there, but there's also a lot of underlap. And the conservation restriction baseline document is really kind of its own beast, and has some very specific things that need to be included to serve as a good baseline document for the future. And I think that the conservation analysis as prescribed in the guidelines is a really good start, gives a lot of good information to work with and have in the record, but it isn't complete. I don't think it can stand in and of itself. So that's my nickel tour of the report that I delivered to you on Tuesday.
Okay, it's a good nickel. Any thoughts or comments from commissioners? Jess, you have any?
Yeah, I always do.
Um,
So I still have this question about, you know, if we for, you know, looking at the northern part of the development and then the southern part, again, that my focus seems to be fixed on the slope to Long Pond. How do we balance out the importance of both those areas? Or any suggestions in terms of, you know, what recommendation we give to the planning board about, you know, okay, should we lessen the development if we can north of the power lines and let them do the stormwater as designed on the slope to Long Pond? Or would that put Long Pond at too much risk, and once we lose it, it's gone? You know, it's in such good shape. So how do we come up with an idea of how to horse trade on this, so to speak?
So I think that's really important to think through. And you know, one of the things that the guidelines recommend is that you take as the first priority, or the first step in prioritization, is you take those features that are protected by law, floodplains, wetlands, buffers, and that constitutes step one of the high priority areas for a site. That I didn't see that as having been done. And I think when you do that, Long Pond comes in to get some of that protection that you're talking about. The floodplain, that there is a map represented in the analysis showing floodplain. The property boundaries on that map are not projected, so it's hard to tell really where that sits. Those data are fairly simple to get, so it can be brought to bear easily enough. But the floodplain associated with wetlands along Long Pond, particularly the southern portion of Long Pond, would get included in that. And then you have the pond itself and its 100-foot buffer, and or the pond and the wetlands and its 100-foot buffer. If that was all part of the high priority, if that was all identified as high priority, which the guidelines recommend, then I think you get somewhere on the protection of Long Pond. Then one of the things that for me was striking is that the conservation analysis didn't even identify the beaver pond, vernal pools at the north. It didn't sort of bring those out other than as wetland resources, jurisdictional wetland resources on the site. But those are really significant sort of features from a habitat standpoint. So when you work in some protection along pond and then think about the importance of the northern part, I think you might get a different picture of what the landscape looks like. But I think to get around to an answer to your question, Jess, making sure that as a first step, one of the high priorities is Long Pond, its floodplain, and buffers.
Yeah, because I know going up that loop road south of the power lines and looking at where they had some basins proposed, they went way down the slope.
Yeah.
Quite a bit down, and that puts them in much more proximity to Long Pond. And is that the only, we've been told, oh, there's no other places really to put those basins, and that's what I want to have some basis to question.
Right. Again, at this stage, that is an abstract discussion. It's hard to argue whether or not, it's hard to evaluate a statement saying they have to go there from an engineering standpoint when you just haven't gone down that road of actually designing things yet. So I think that if the commission, I think this is an important thing to express to the planning board. We want to maximize the distance between stormwater features and important resources, including Long Pond. And that is a high priority for the Conservation Commission. In addition or above and beyond everything else, maximizing the distance between infrastructure and important resources on the site is a critically important concern that the commission has. And put that down on the table and then see what gets proposed. And then kind of go through that process of review and horse trading and arguing and cajoling and all the rest of it.
Pulling hair out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Matt, I do appreciate, you did put a paragraph in there as you were talking about with the beaver impoundment area and things like that, and on the original analysis that was identified as a low priority area, which just seems so out of left field. And so thank you for identifying and clarifying too. And thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. No, I think that, just to put it bluntly, the conservation, the prioritization that was forwarded is really conveniently aligned with the loop road that is partially built. That's not how it should be done. I realize that there's some investment that's been made in those infrastructure components, but I don't think that should rule the design of a project today. So I think that really stepping back and saying, the fact that that loop road exists and some things are in place, is something to bear in mind, but that shouldn't be the overriding consideration.
Right, it's almost as if what's the term I'm looking for? So you write the history by making it disturbed. You call it pre-disturbed.
Yeah.
Or I should say, by disturbing it, it is now pre-disturbed. So, how convenient is that? Correct. So,
Yeah.
One thing I did want to question. I saw one of your comments talked about porous pavement and things like that. I guess I'm wondering about the efficacy of that when you consider north of the right-of-way and the amount of ledge that is up there and probably just under the surface. Would that really amount to much or really provide much of a benefit, knowing that it is added cost to the developer to do that and or homeowner or whatever? I guess I'm just wondering, obviously I'm sure you didn't do soil borings and all that, but my assumption is that even if you did that only a couple feet under, you'd end up hitting ledge. It runs off however the ledge goes, wherever and such. Any comments?
Yeah, those kind of comments are really just throwing some things on the table that could be appropriate and might minimize or mitigate some of the impacts associated with a project like this. So, those are really, I think, should be taken. An engineer you'd really want to have a conversation with an engineer and say, can we get any real benefit to the protection of natural resources by doing this, and make sure it's on the table, make sure it's part of the discussion. But yeah, I didn't mean to put anything on there that in that context that was, a hard and fast, like this should be done kind of recommendation.
Okay, and similar to the habitat crossing, for all forms of habitat, to be for the roadway to go over. I could see that it's being a little bit of a challenge, especially to maintain too. So.
Yep, definitely. Again, it would be ideal if a development of this nature could simply avoid crossing with roads, a right of way that's in the condition that's in. That's actually, rights of way are, they can be jarring, I guess. But there's really some pretty valuable habitat in rights of way. And so to the extent that we could potentially avoid crossings altogether, that would be the ideal. Probably not on the table. I think the location of that right of way might make 70% of the parcel to the north off limits if you were to say you can't cross that. I don't know what the number is, but it might be unfeasible to prevent a crossing. So looking at what are some mitigative measures that have been employed to address those impacts that you can't avoid. So trying to put things on the table that might be worth investigating. More expensive, more difficult to manage long term, but maybe worth the fight in certain circumstances.
Yeah, surely. Yeah. As you said, seen from afar, a right of way, cuts through a vista and really makes it look very ugly. When you get up close to it, though, it is surprising what happens in a right of way, believe it or not.
Truly. And that one, interestingly enough, is it doesn't have a ton of invasive species. It's you know, there's a lot of berry producing fruit, fruit producing shrubs. There's, you know, evidence of turtle nesting right at the crossing. You know, there's a lot of value there for wildlife, especially.
How much of a difference in impact on that right of way would there be if the design went from 2 crossings on a loop to a single crossing?
My personal opinion, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I could point you to the right studies that might back this up, but my personal opinion is fewer crossings is less mortality for turtles, right? So if there were a way to change it from a loop north, you know, accessing the north portion north of the right of way via a dead end cul-de-sac and keeping a loop on the south side, you know, that's better than having 2 crossings. And you know, it's not as good as having no crossings, but it's a measurable improvement, I think.
Great.
The other thing I forgot to mention in the high level summary was the permitting evaluation. So there is, you know, there's a breakdown on what I think the MISA implications, Endangered Species Act. They've got to go back to heritage at this point, and there's a pretty good likelihood of tripping MIPA review with this project, especially if heritage decides to permit this, or you know, decides this requires a conservation management permit, that would almost certainly trip a MIPA review.
Any other questions from commissioners? Before I open this up to,
Does Heather have anything?
yeah, I'm sorry, Heather, yeah.
No, I started going through Matt's report and I made notes of some items and I appreciate all the detail, and I'm in the process of also to just because I know we talked about the single crossing. So I'm meeting with the Chief Johnston from the fire department at some point next week to discuss what my thought is on this, to see if it is at all feasible on a fire standpoint about that only having the single crossing. So I appreciate that, and hearing that talk, I try to remember of under pavement turtle crossings that I may have seen in my past, to see if I can find some of those, and maybe we could try to figure out something like that for that area too, see if I can figure something like that. So I appreciate all of his work on it. I probably got like 6 or so pages in. I did appreciate the blasting part of it as well. I think that's a good item. Some of the statements in there about impacts to wildlife and limiting when the blasting will occur, keep those limits, those impact limits there. So I think that's another good item to make sure we note those and pass those on to the planning board as well, because I feel like that would really help some butters concerns as far as blasting and wildlife impacts if we limited the time that those could be done to lessen those impacts. So I appreciate that work too. But it was a lot to digest, and as I was going through it, I'm like, I should probably have the analysis in front of me, and I didn't get to that. So I'm going to be sitting there with multiple pages on my desk going back and forth between the two. But I appreciate all the work into it, and as I started diving into it as well. And it's a lot of stuff, and I'm taking notes as well as we're going through here and what else I should put in there. So I appreciate it very much.
Have any thoughts, George?
Just my concern is how do we go forward from here? Because we're on a fairly tight schedule with the planning board.
Yep.
So we can't really send it back to the developer to redo.
Well, I would think we could, you know, say could we say things like, in light of the inadequacy of certain sections, um, we can urge the planning board to say with the slope to Long Pond, move those stormwater structures further away. Redesign that area, something like that, that we would encourage that. And it would have to, I guess, go back over to the planning board process.
Yeah, there's some concerns, obviously, that especially I had with Matt's comments with the wildlife crossing on the power lines. I feel like some of those details really should be in there
Yeah.
before we can make our recommendation. And I'll try to pass those along to the planner. I tried talking with him today, but unfortunately he was running out the door this afternoon. So with Mark, so we can try to, and I did reach out to Jonathan from the planning board to meet with him as well. So I feel like whatever concerns we have, I can jot those down and pass those on to the planning board, because unfortunately they're meeting the same night we are at the next meeting. So we can at least give them some sort of update on where we are, and they can pass that along. And I can also give that to Attorney Collins and Stan Dillis as well, so they have an idea of where we are on that. And I know it's probably going to go another meeting before we get to that. I mean, we won't get something to the planning board, I'm going to assume, probably until the second meeting of September.
And since we do have 3 planning board members on here at the moment, and do we have any feedback from them based on what they've heard tonight?
Want me to go or not?
Sure, Ken.
So I think as a planning, Jonathan's on here too, but I think in general, Matt, just for your information, I'm vice chair of the planning board. Nice to meet you, and thank you very much.
You too. Thank you.
Jonathan Kranz, who is our chairman, is about to come on, but off the top of my head, there has been no indication from this applicant of anything that needs to be of a high priority as far as time. I think so far the applicant has indicated to us, and Jonathan, you can verify if you want, that whatever time it takes for you guys to do what you have to do, bring it to us and we'll move the process back if we have to accordingly, rather than rush the process. I think that we have got no indication from them whatsoever that they're asking us to move the process ahead quicker, is what I'm getting at. At the end of the day, we still are in the preliminary plan phase, as you know, Matt. And so consequently, if we get this done during the preliminary phase, they should be able, and we have talked about many of the subjects you already talked about, including stormwater and blasting and so forth, and understand those concerns already, but it's great to have another thought on it. I don't think there's any rush for you guys to make a decision on what you have to do and to get to the planning board, and a planning board will, I think, handle it accordingly. Would you like to comment, Jonathan?
Yeah, through the chair to Ken and everyone else. I can confirm what Ken has said. Just as a formality, of course, we would need to request an extension from the applicant. But given everything that Bob Collins has previously said, and I believe Ken is right, I think they'd be entirely amenable to extending this in order to give you enough time to make an adequate recommendation so that we can proceed to a decision on the preliminary plan.
All right, very good, very good. Then,
One more thing.
yes, go ahead, Ken.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Matt, I hate to bring this up, but unfortunately, at the very beginning, you said you were thankful that there was a law put in place. This is not a law, and I'd like you to clarify that this is a guideline, because that's a terrible word. When you use that word, that changes a lot of things in this call, believe me.
Yeah, no, understood. My apologies for that mistake. Have you, I'll go back through the document and make sure that that's correct.
You mentioned it verbally at the beginning. You congratulated us, everyone, on the guidelines. And then you said, was happy that the town had this law, and it's clearly not a law.
Gotcha. My apologies for that mistake.
Thanks.
Anything else from commissioners?
I just noticing on our screen, Jennifer Madsen from Mass Audubon. Just wondering if this abuts the Audubon property, if there are any comments from Mass Audubon.
We do, and I'm going to invite Tom Lotzenheiser to say a few words.
Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. And I really valued Matt's review, and I'm wondering if the BSC report is a public document. If we could get a copy of that at some point. We do have a comment letter on this phase of the project, and just to some vacations and lack of communication, we just emailed it to you this evening. But I'm wondering if it would be appropriate, I could read it into the record if folks would feel that was a benefit.
Yep, please.
Sure. So our organization has been involved in the many phases of this development for over a decade. And Mass Audubon's Rocky Hill Wildlife Sanctuary was a negotiated result of an earlier phase of this development project. The same sanctuary abuts the Stratton Hill project. So several points we'd like to make. The project site is part of a large contiguous habitat area that is important for many native species, most notably the Blandings turtle, the state-listed threatened species. It is important that all feasible measures be taken in the project design, construction, and operation to avoid, minimize, and mitigate potential harms to the Blandings turtle population present in the area. This population is among the most important in the state for this species, and its conservation is a high priority for the state and local environmental community. Blandings turtles are long-lived and reproduce very slowly. One of the greatest threats to their populations is road mortality, and females are most vulnerable as they travel across uplands seeking nesting sites. The loss of even one breeding female can be highly detrimental to the long-term persistence of a population, such as the one present in the area of Stratton Hill. Subdivision designs that minimize the potential for road crossings are essential. And when road construction is unavoidable, the design must facilitate the safe movement of turtles across roads. For example, no vertical curbing. To reduce the risk of road mortality, is it essential that Blandings turtles be able to meet all of their habitat needs within the undeveloped lands, including Rocky Hill Wildlife Sanctuary. Extensive wetlands and numerous vernal pools in the Rocky Hill and Stratton Hill areas provide excellent habitat for most of the population's requirements, except critically only limited or marginal quality nesting habitat. Recognizing the high mitigation value of nesting habitat, the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program required Fox Meadow Realty to construct 2 turtle nesting sites within the area under the terms of their 2005 conservation and management permit for the earlier subdivision phase. The subdivision in Groton was constructed, but these turtle nesting areas have not been created to date. Nesting areas should be provided as part of this new phase of development. So to facilitate the construction of ecologically important and heritage mandated turtle nesting sites, Mass Audubon is offering technical assistance and land to host these features. Consultation on siting and design details would be needed prior to finalization of any permit conditions from the town or state associated with such mitigation. But we welcome these anticipated discussions and hope that all parties can coordinate to support the Blandings turtle population in the area. And we appreciate the Conservation Commission's careful consideration of this matter. Signed by Jen.
Well, thank you very much. Nicely written.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess to underscore that, I feel like it bears repeating that Fox Meadow has not lived up to the terms of their 2005 CMP. And until they do, I'm personally hard pressed to understand how they could extend their, into constructing this subdivision. So, which also affects priority habitat. So I would think that Heritage could, ultimately have control over their permitting process, but I think that's something that the commission and the planning board need to be aware of and hold as a priority.
Yeah, I would think that on that, one of the difficulties is that that original CMP was covering both Groton and Ayer.
That's right.
And with them not fulfilling the obligation in Groton, we're still a separate town. So that would be where natural heritage would have more weight maybe than we would.
That could be, except that there was supposed to be under that original CMP, a nesting site in Groton and another one in Ayer.
Okay.
And only the nesting site in Groton was defined as to its location, adjacent to the power line at the top of Rocky Hill.
Okay.
The Ayer site, at least I've gone through the old subdivision plans, and there doesn't seem to be a defined envelope for the second turtle nesting site. In any case, neither of them were constructed, so
Yeah.
you know, I think it's open now about where they should go and how they should be designed.
Yeah, and they'd probably need to get farther down the preliminary design road to be ready to approach heritage, I would think.
Likely so.
Anything else from commissioners?
Yeah, we haven't talked directly to Heritage ourselves on this project, have we? Or
No, I haven't, but that is an interesting point that that Tom brought up, and I appreciate that. I took note of that. I might see if I can reach out to them and find out about that and see what indications that might have on their permitting process on this project.
yeah, because I think right now, most of the conversation with Natural Heritage is taking place between Bob Collins and Natural Heritage. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would say probably getting our voice in there now would be, is a good time.
Ken,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the commission, this is a great point that Tom brings up. I did read that CMP and I was concerned myself that I wasn't sure if it had been done or not. So saying it's not been done, I don't see why you couldn't recommend to the planning board, and the planning board could not easily put in a decision that nothing happens on the job until those two turtle protection areas are built first. In other words, that'd be the first part of construction that's done, then approved by Natural Heritage that they're completed or some detail along those lines before any other road construction would proceed. We could put that in our decision if it comes to that, based on your recommendation and Tom's input.
yeah, good idea.
I
One
think,
Yeah. I mean, in terms of suitable nesting areas, this would be, I have a question, I guess, for Tom on that too, is right now, given Matt's observation of nesting activity under the power lines and the right of way, that does seem to be the best area. Well, I don't know, but is that the best area in the Ayer side for where a turtle nesting area might be constructed?
I'm less familiar with the Ayer side of the site than the Groton side. I will say that the right of way on the Groton side is marginal at best as a Blanding's turtle nesting habitat. A lot of it is sort of north facing. They prefer south facing slopes. A lot of it is very far away from wetlands, so they have to travel overland quite some distance to get to open gravel areas. So I don't know. It's possible that the Ayer right of way provides better habitat.
It's pretty good, and it's nicely adjacent to Long Pond, which
Right.
may be good habitat for them. But there's also turtle nesting activity in that spoil pile that's just at the south edge of the beaver pond. So
The the beaver wetlands are better habitat. And we actually have talked over several years with Heritage and with Fox Meadow representatives about constructing those turtle nesting areas, and it's never happened. But we have a couple of sites that we think would be good on at least on the Groton side. I guess the other thing I just wanted to say was that this population of Blanding's turtles is really one of the prime populations in the state, and I'm not sure if people appreciate that it's really a unique feature of the site, and it's and a lot of these turtles are currently, crossing roads, even one was killed on Robin Hill Road not so many years ago. They cross Sandy Pond Road and are at risk of mortality in searching for nesting sites. So that nesting habitat within that conserved land block is really just a key feature of any mitigation for this project.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. Jeff Tillotson, you had your hand up?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have my microphone with me now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Actually, my question was answered by Mr. Lotzenheiser as he was doing the last explanation. I wanted to make sure that first of all, thank you very much. It's a gracious offer for doing the turtle habitat there. And having spent a lot of time poring over these plans and who owns what land, I was a little unsure that Audubon had the land at this point to make that offer, but it's been cleared up. Thank you. And I just want to say, Mr. Byrne, thank you very much for a very well-written analysis at this point.
You're welcome.
I found it extremely helpful tonight. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very welcome.
Mr. Chairman, to Tom's point, would you have a problem with me sharing it with Mass Audubon at this point, or?
I don't have a problem with it.
I think it's a good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nice to have him on our team. Should we open this up to people listening or viewing at this point? Anyone care to chime in?
So, Mr. Chairman, this is Marion Stoddard.
Good evening, Marion.
Hello, good evening. So I was interested to, I think this is really a very interesting meeting and thank you very much. I was interested in something that Matt Burns said about there being he felt there was a great need for a better conservation study. And so than what was provided by the developer. And so is this something that the Conservation Commission or the Planning Board can request of the developer? Or would there be value in that?
Anyone answer that?
Well, I know, way back when this first surfaced last year, 2021, we had said from the start that the breakdown in the high, medium, and low priority areas that they submitted was really not well done. I mean, it really didn't make sense. And then they resubmitted, they did a revision, and I was disappointed last fall before that revision didn't change that at all. So my question is, I just wondered to what extent, if we ask for some certain areas that would be useful to us for the recommendation, if we ask for those to be redone, would we get much of a different answer?
So, Mr. Chairman, to continue this discussion, I understood Mr. Burns to say that one of the things that was lacking was information about um, 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 oh dear, the habitat for um, for beavers, and so and then I've just have heard that where there are beaver homes, this is a prime area for nesting for Blanding's turtles. So it would seem to me that it would be very important for the study to identify beaver homes.
Well, I think we have a good idea where they are.
Okay.
On the property. I mean, Mr. Byrne, you've identified that area.
Yeah, and really the point is that the conservation analysis as it was presented didn't acknowledge those kinds of resources. They didn't evaluate that. Essentially, they took the Oxbow report from 2004 and plugged that in as their evaluation of wildlife habitat for the entire site. And of course, their report was well to the north, focused on studies well to the north, and just doesn't address wildlife habitat on the subject site. So that's one of the key deficiencies of their presentation.
Does that answer your question, Marion?
Well, not really. So I guess I still have. I'd like to raise a question as to whether, based on the information that we've been given this evening, whether there would be, whether there is a need and value to have a better conservation study prepared for the town of Ayer.
Marion, I guess in my opinion, I understand what you're recommending. I think for me, that is the basis and the need for the peer review, and for what Matt has done. He's identified, essentially, in my mind, a flaw that's in that analysis, which I think is what you're getting at, and I think we acknowledge that flaw. Identifying prime beaver, locating spots as low priority does not really make sense, and so I think the Conservation Commission understands that. At least that would be my point of view. I don't know what other commissioners think, but I believe that's what you're getting at, Marion. So I think we acknowledge the information that Matt's provided to us, and I think we're okay with that. And again, like I said, him identifying that probably flaw in that analysis.
Thank you.
Do you think, Mark, though, that we should have them go back to, say, Oxbow, or and do additional studies that do pertain more to the Ayer site in particular? Would that contribute to our the recommendation that we would write, or?
And I think that's what I'm getting at is, I don't know if having a new study tell us that is going to change anything based on what Matt provided us and what we, just as conservation commissioners, understand ourselves. So our recommendation is likely to say exactly what a new report would say regardless. I don't know if we need somebody else to put it in writing versus just us put it in writing. You know what I mean, Jess? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that made very, very good sense.
Okay.
It raises an interesting procedural question, right? Like when an applicant presents you with a conservation analysis that you don't agree with, what's the path forward? You can say to the planning board, we disagree with their ultimate prioritization, and we think they did it wrong. And it's on the planning board to say to the applicant, you need to go fix this and come up with a different prioritization based on maybe comments that the Conservation Commission provides. Or you know, like, do you present a competing view of what is the high priority? You know, like, that puts the burden on you, so that doesn't seem to make sense. But it does. It raises an interesting sort of procedural question of how you deal with this situation.
Yeah. So that puts the burden of proof on us if we want to say something rather than, so I see what Matt's point is, Mark. Because, you know, I'm got in mind my own thoughts on recommendations, which would make for a very different looking development. But question of burden of proof.
I tried looking, unfortunately, I apologize. I didn't print that part of the OSRD, but I believe that is written into the first page of it, which is, I'm sorry, I didn't print that today. But there is a section in there that does allow the planning board something. So I think it's more of the definitive stage of that and the preliminary. And that's one of the things that I when I said earlier that I was going to speak with Jonathan, I'm going through this process. And with the new OSRD regulations that would go in effect for the next subdivision, obviously not this one if we could, but I've noticed there's some issues because obviously this, according to Mass Review, there's items missing from that conservation analysis. Well, we need to figure out at the beginning when this conservation analysis gets submitted, who's approving it, who's going through to make sure all these items are even there. Is it something that the planning board would handle, the conservation commission would handle? Is it something that we need to make sure if neither one of us is qualified to do so, that there's automatically that goes to a consultant to make sure that these items are all there? So it's raised, I said, I started doing my review and then I started listening to all these questions going, oh wait, who does all this? And how do I find it? And I got sidetracked this afternoon at 3 o'clock trying to figure this all out and what happens when we get to that. Because I have serious concerns with Matt's comment on the wildlife corridor, the what priority that the right of way has. I've worked next to so many of them and lived next to them that I've known so many animals that use them, and same thing with railroad tracks. It's an open space that nobody goes on. So I mean, that's bear, deer, mountain lion, whatever you want to have, they all use those. So I feel like not having that makes it really difficult to prioritize what's important at this site, because you kind of want to include that in there and limit the development crossing that around one side. Obviously you do high on the north side, but that crossing is high as well. So you don't want to do these double crossings, which is why I also contacted the police and fire, and while I'm meeting with the fire chief next week to hopefully figure out if at all on their point, they think it's okay to do a cul-de-sac and on dead end road on that point. But before bringing that to the planning board, because it would just shut it down no matter what if the public safety wasn't there. So, but I feel like there's serious, just going through this process, there's not 100% clear way of how we're doing it. And I'm trying to clear that up before we get to another one. But again, but there is a point where the planning board can make that authority as far as the priority lands on there and approving or denying based on that.
I think one of the things that makes this particular project so difficult is that it started way back in 2003 to 2005. And then it went to completion in the Groton side, mostly except for those turtle protection areas. And then it, went into limbo for 12 years, and then it's now come back. And I think there's a sense that the applicant is also at times trying to rely on the notion that, well, we got this permitted way back then, so your concerns now don't quite matter. And that's different from, say, a completely undeveloped site that there've been no plans submitted in the past. And so a question for Matt, it's like, how do we negotiate that? Because I think you're right in question of maybe asking for some better studies on certain of the areas that they proposed development on, in particular the right of way and actually that soil pile toward the north near the beaver pond, as well as, of course, my favorite, the Long Pond slope, none of which has been seriously studied in the detail that they gave to the Groton side back in 2005. That might be worth requiring them or, asking them to have Oxbow do something more detailed now. But we do get that pushback, well, we had this approved.
Yeah, no,
It doesn't matter.
Yes, I could see that as being something that we could request. Again, I think part of the peer review was, as Heather noted, to make sure that all the items that we requested were actually there in case we, quote unquote, missed it. And so I feel there should be no concern with us going back to them saying, well, you missed this, you missed that, and this is subpar possibly. Yes, we could ask for something like that.
Good word.
Sure, I could see that as happening. I remember when we first came through, them identifying, was it low priority habitat that was farmland or something, right? I remember saying something to that effect. It just
There's farmland out in the middle of the Long Pond Marsh.
oh yeah, that was it. Right. The farmland in the middle of marsh. Right. So again, I think there's, they can do an analysis. Do we agree with it or not? That's one thing. And then again, and that's why we brought in a peer reviewer, somebody with Matt's qualifications, to help us rationalize some of these things that we think we see, but we're not quite maybe qualified to comment on, completely. So yeah.
And every permit that they had in place is expired. So it's all fresh. It's all new.
Well,
everything has changed in 20 years. I mean, that's,
one of the things that's been raised though is the length of the road. By the new bylaws in the town of Ayer, they would need a waiver from the planning board for a road going beyond, I think it's 650 feet. Is that right, Ken?
That would be if it was considered a dead end.
Right. So, yeah, and
I don't know if you want to go there at this particular meeting.
right. Well, I know, just as a humble resident, as well as a member of the Conservation Commission, the idea of a loop road that's at the end of a series of dead ends, Snake Hill Road, Wright Road, and then this loop road, I think citizens like me need a good explanation for why that's still not a dead end. One entrance, one entrance, one entrance, even if, so that's a question down the road for the planning board. But getting pushback from, say, the attorney for the applicant that, well, that's already been permitted, or that still, there's legal issues that I don't understand, but we get met with, it seems like we get some pushback on that, of has everything expired or not.
Why, what do they, how can they say that?
Yeah.
Ken, you have your hand up.
Yeah, through you to Matt. Matt, were you aware that there's an approved subdivision on the land currently?
Oh, no, actually.
Okay.
How long is that a perpetual approval?
It's still in effect. It's still
okay.
It's being, the lots are being assessed now as potentially developable land. You can see it on the map, the town's GIS system. But the other question I had through the chair to Matt was, were you aware before tonight there was a conservation management permit for the project in both towns?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. And that you just made a statement that you said the permits are gone, but they're not. They're still live.
No, that had to be done within 7 years.
They're still constructing under the permit in the town of Groton right now.
On the Stratton Hill side?
Yes.
So the CMP was issued in 2005.
On the Groton side. One permit in both towns, and it's still under construction in Groton. There are elements of it that have expired, but I believe in-depth review will show the permit is still in place, but needs to be amended.
Okay, that's
an
interesting nuance.
You're gonna look at, that's all.
Yeah, that's good to know.
But you should have known through research that yeah, there's an approved subdivision there with currently lots laid out around that loop road.
Yeah, I do see those.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
The
Can I just
question, the
ask-
question that came up that I brought up and it's still out there is this application needs to end the discussion of the existing subdivision, put it to sleep and start with a new OSRD, which is what, this is actually the second attempt. You may have seen, I think in your notes or in your list of documents that you saw, there was a subdivision last year, which was withdrawn.
Right.
And this is the second go around with a much smaller subdivision plan under the OSRD. So it may be the third actually, because we have one that's already sitting there that hasn't been finished. So our goal is to get that one, not there anymore and start over. But it still hangs there till officially it's not ended.
So Ken, this is maybe my idiot question for myself. I still don't fully understand how you have a subdivision approved back in 2005, then
Three.
2003, all work ceases on it in 2008. Nothing happens on the site for another 12 years, 14 years. And then how is it that that original approval hasn't expired? I mean, how is it that I don't fully understand the legality of why that's still in effect. And I don't think I'd be the only one. So I think
I don't know if I should do it. Should I do it with the Conservation Commission? I mean, I can. So I took the same opinion as you, and I did a lot of work on it. And I saw Mr. Collins's letter, and I said, I don't agree with the letter. And then I went through it. And basically what it amounts to is since that time, subdivisions in the town of Ayer have typically been written into the decisions that they must be completed within a certain amount of time. That was never put in this original subdivision. There was never a deadline of 7 years, which is like a typical situation, and a renewal requirement. So typically subdivisions today, we would say that, they need to be completed within a certain amount of time. There'd be a document to that effect. They'd have to read to it. And if they needed more time, they'd have to come back for an extension. But there was nothing like that that can be found. On top of that, we passed the, in 2018 and 19, when we updated the zoning, we incorporated into the zoning, the new OSRD requirement. But we never changed any dimensional requirements or any locations in town to change the zoning in that particular area. So that area has always been the A1 zone, and the lot sizes have always been the same. So we never changed the required lot size and shrank it, which would have changed it for them, but did some other dimensional change, because when we went to the town meeting at that time, we basically said, we're not prepared to make dimensional changes in town. We just want to upgrade the language in the zoning bylaws to make it more complete and include inclusionary zoning and include the OSRD and other benefits that we thought would be beneficial to the town. But we never made a change in that section of the land. So that land always sat there from the beginning with the same dimensional requirement. So in essence, there was no legal change. Mr. Collins mentioned in his letter, that they would have got protection under the old subdivision plan, for 8 years if there had been a change, but there was no change. So there's really nothing, no document, and I've checked it with Mr. Schultz, the zoning enforcement officer. There's no document that made it expire, required a completion, required a review to come back to the board, or a dimensional change. So, there has really been no change, and it just sits there. So that's the way I understand it. And from the work I did, that's the conclusion that I came to. That's what I have on that. So I would prefer to have them submit something that ends the old subdivision and says, this is the new subdivision, period. But we haven't really got that because we haven't got to the final definitive plan. We're still in a preliminary plan.
That's very interesting.
That's what I had, Mr. Chair.
That's what I had. Boom.
Sorry. So does that help, Jess?
I'm not happy about it. Has this been confirmed with our town council?
Well, it doesn't have to go to town council. The zoning enforcement officer sees it that way at this point in time. And there's nothing there to bring to town council. I can see. I mean, I would have brought it there. So,
Okay.
but not really in the discussion of you guys, so I thank you.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate that. Annie. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
All right. How about you?
I'm good. Ken, thank you for that. That was very enlightening.
Oh, jeez.
I do have a question though about the fish and game permit that was issued, from National Heritage, which has several conditions attached to it, including the Blanding Turtles nesting areas that were mentioned by Tom earlier, that were not met. And that has an expiration date of 2012, I believe. And I guess my question to Matt and to anyone who's on this call is, if that permit is expired, then the applicant would have to get a new permit from National Heritage in order to develop the site, regardless of what is in place with town permitting. Is that something that Matt or anyone can speak to?
That is my understanding. The first general condition of the permit issued in 2005 is the work as described below, and that's both Ayer and Groton subdivisions, authorized by this conservation management permit, shall be completed within 7 years from date of issuance, period. If necessary, the permit holder shall submit a written request to the division for an extension, at which time the division will review the proposed project pursuant to MISA for impacts to any state protected rare wildlife. So, the work as described below was not completed within 7 years. So I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know, if things are still kind of going on in Groton, does that drag this out as far as heritage is concerned? I don't think so. But my interpretation of things is that they have to go back to Natural Heritage de novo with a proposal for review under MISA.
Go ahead, Annie.
So I would think that someone from the town, Heather, I guess, should be communicating with National Heritage directly. And also, I would go to town council. I would involve town council in this. I mean, this is a development within Ayer, and, clearly, Matt is not a legal expert, and I assume the Conservation Commission members are not legal experts, and I assume the planning board members are not legal experts, although Ken, it looks like, is an amazing researcher. I don't see why we wouldn't take advantage of talking to town council about all of this. It seems pretty complicated to me with all these permits from these various agencies and organizations, the town, and this permit crosses two town boundaries, and there are, MISA or MIPA permits and National Heritage permits and town permits that were issued 17 years ago. I mean, this seems like the perfect thing to review with town council.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, George?
Yeah, I think that's the sticking point we have to investigate.
Yeah, that's some brand new information. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
You have anything, something else?
I just wanted to ask, can we make this report, Matt's wonderful report, available to the public? Can that get posted on the town's website?
I
It's
have no-
technically posted at the moment, Annie. It's part of the Conservation Commission's packet. But if the board would like me to post it to the website, that they would see what they'd have to say about that.
I would say posting it into the Stratton Hill file on the town's website would be the right location. That'd be great from my perspective.
You have your hand up, George? Oh, I thought you had your hand up, sorry. You okay with that, Mark?
So, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Marion.
Oh, I just wanted to say this is really addressed to Jess. I just do not want to minimize the importance of protecting Long Pond. I think it's very important that we protect Long Pond for many reasons. So I just would put it. Well, anyway, I'm not.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, we
thank
back you up, Marion.
All right, thank
We
you.
all do, very much. Yep. Yep. Anyone else? We're way past time on this. I know this is important, but we're also way past time. Any other?
So we're not going to have a recommendation ready for the planning board before our next meeting for sure.
Correct.
Procedurally, maybe we should all start gathering our thoughts and comments, sending them to Heather to compile, and so we don't violate open meeting law.
Correct.
And identify some next steps, such as, I think we do need to start to reach out directly to and have a conversation directly with Natural Heritage about some of our concerns. And get that started, and maybe all of us should just consider what areas we would think might need to be redone with modern data, because what Matt said about the burden of proof, it shouldn't be on us, it should be on them, and we can't just come back in and just say without data, oh, we disagree with this, so here's our recommendation to the planning board. I think we need to have it based on something.
Right.
Matt, you look like you wanted to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah, just not to draw it out, but I'm kind of just thinking what the tenor of your recommendation might be. We disagree with the applicant's conclusions because XYZ, and our opinion, present an opinion that the resources of Long Pond, the Beaver Pond, the connection to Mass Audubon to the north, all these things, these are things that we believe are important on the landscape and were inadequately addressed. And that kind of puts it demonstrates that you don't agree with the prioritization as presented, and identifies the things that the commission feels are particularly important.
But it also goes to the big point that you made overall, Matt, which was that the data that they used from 2003 to 5, et cetera, doesn't seem to have had an actual impact on the design. That the design, starts with that existing loop road and sort of ignores the data where it's inconvenient. So, yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
Okay. So I think we need to get our thoughts and recommendations to Heather, and she can compile these, and getting some, and then get something back to all of us. So we can check it out.
And then the question would be to Jonathan and Ken and Jeff is, your next meeting is before our next meeting. Do you think based on the discussion tonight, you have enough sense of where we might be heading to speak to the applicant that it's going to take more time? Because they did turn in a subpar product. So, yeah.
Well, the issue is, would you have a recommendation to us before our September 27th meeting? We know that you can't, we didn't expect a recommendation for the September 8th meeting. We knew about that. That would have been impossible. But it's our second meeting in September. I was wondering if you could get a recommendation in time, and that's up to you guys, because as Ken said earlier, of course, you have all the time you need. We just need to know whether we need to request for an extension or not.
I think that the commission will probably be able to get you a recommendation, but the recommendation might be that we don't have enough information to make one.
Correct.
Is what I think, from what I can hear is what we're getting, and how I feel too, given the report. That's my opinion on as far as giving a recommendation to the planning board would be. I don't know if it'd be beneficial at all to have a meeting with Attorney Collins to express these concerns to him and Standales beforehand, so they can have an understanding what's going to be coming. If the commission thinks that would be important to let them know that, and maybe they have a chance to revise or get us some revisions so we can make that recommendation. That's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan, what works for the planning board? Because on the one hand, say, just on the thing that I keep harping on, that slope down to Long Pond, where they have a bunch of stormwater structures, what impact would, say, us saying to the planning board, we recommend they don't do anything there for these reasons? It's too close to Long Pond, too much infrastructure and the floodplain and so on, and that we disagree. Would that be actionable enough for you to push back on the applicant about that design in that area?
Well, we can certainly introduce the discussion, but I think, the critical thing really is your recommendation about the area, the priority areas is the critical thing.
Yeah.
So at this point, and I know everyone's tired, all we really need from you, and it doesn't have to be tonight, is just a sense of how much time do we want an extension for? Just like, what are we asking for? That's all.
Okay. We could probably have a good sense of that by the next meeting.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, can we have two priority areas identified?
What do you mean by two?
Well, the Long Pond and the turtle nesting area of the power lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Go ahead, Jess.
So my question back to Jonathan is, you want us a comment, or through you to Jonathan, comment on about the priority areas. And this is what I said before. We have said last year as well that they designated the slope down to Long Pond as low priority, and that was a junk recommendation, not based on any. Well, that's my opinion. It's a junk recommendation. They didn't revise that when we expressed that to them. So again, we can say the same thing to you again, that so what gives you actionable data?
If you make a recommendation that says that slope should be part of the high priority area, that becomes part of the deliberation we make at our planning board meetings.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
You got that.
Okay, thank you.
You have your hand up, Ken.
Yeah, I was gonna add one more thought. It may be, I believe, Jess, and through you, Mr. Chair, to Jess, typically on the conservation analysis, you're looking for a low, medium, and high priority assessment. Is it possible that this is a time when we're going to have only two assessments, low and high? And there should be actually no median, but I'll follow. That was just a quick thought. We can pass that on our own, to the engineer and whatnot. it seems to me that you guys want that revision to happen, and we should emphasize that. But lastly, I'd like to say that there's no misunderstanding about the stormwater. We've been talking about it with them through the preliminary plan, that we want the stormwater locations out of the buffer zones, actually. We're trying to get the entire process as far as we can from Long Pond. That's not news to us, that we've had that right from the get-go.
Yeah, but they are out of the
But
buffer.
we're in a
zone.
preliminary plan. We've
Yeah.
asked them for new testing, new locations to determine. Their answer to the stormwater question originally was that that's where the areas were done for testing. So therefore, they held the stormwater basins in those areas, but we're asking them for new testing. Go to a new location, do new testings, find a way that it is compatible with the soils in the new test area, and relocate those stormwater basins to areas of new testing. Because we've heard that from we've been cognizant of that since the very beginning.
Yeah.
So but the question of Long Pond, I'll bring up, we're talking about land that they own that abuts Long Pond. So the concern is in that abutting land. It's not the actual pond itself. It's the land that butts the pond on the slope. Which,
And they are out of the buffer zone there.
no, but in general, their land ownership goes to the
Right.
water's edge.
Yeah.
They don't own the pond in this
Right.
particular piece of land. They own to the water's edge.
Yeah, they can't own the pond anyways because it's a great pond.
Right, so I'm just clarifying that, because the term has been used, Long Pond, as though they owned Long Pond. At least I'm taking it almost that way.
Oh, no, we're talking about impact to Long Pond, which is
Right.
still currently in a very pristine condition relative to
We
this
and we
area.
all know this. We've all walked it. We walked the trails out there. Jonathan and I have been over every inch of this place 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
So we're all on board with that.
Okay.
It's that slope that leads its way to Long Pond.
Yeah, I mean, if I had my personal preference, there wouldn't be any stormwater structures
Right.
on that slope at all. It would be left in complete current forested condition, especially given the drop off, vertical drop off. So, okay. I'll shut up.
So we feel it would benefit us to provide Matt's analysis, or the report that we have here today to the developers, and let them know that from the planning board perspective, that Conservation Commission is very likely going to be looking for some additional data, and they can start to digest some of that, and maybe that would speed that up. I don't know if that would help you, Jonathan, if you think.
I believe Matt submitted some of the analysis, his report to Stan Dillis.
No, I did
You
not.
didn't? Oh, okay, I thought you
No,
did. All
sorry.
right.
No.
So we could pass that on to them.
I think you're muted, Jonathan.
After all, they're paying for the report. Yes, I think it would be a courtesy to share it with them. Yes.
Through the chair, from my standpoint, the Conservation Commission is the client.
Yeah, I understand
So,
that.
yeah, so by all means, once I hand it off where they feel appropriate.
Right.
Okay. It's a good thought. Anything else briefly?
No. So maybe our assignment is to put into words our thoughts and get them circulated to Heather, and then you can distribute them.
Yep.
And then it gives us all something to really focus on at our next meeting.
Right. It's a good conversation, but Heather, are there any office updates that can't wait?
Oh, no, I don't really have anything that can wait.
Okay. Anyone else have any last thoughts before we sign off?
Thank you all.
Motion to adjourn.
I heard a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it was a motion to adjourn, moved by Mark Phillips, seconded by George Bacon. Do a roll call vote. George, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jess, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mark, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Cindy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay.